I'll give you a proper introduction in post so we can just kind of roll straight into conversation.
Okay.
But I mean, really, I wanted to center the conversation. There's a lot to discuss between, bringing John out to Mavericks, stuff like that, Freeline, the history of Freeline, what's going on with the WSL in 2021. But I really think we should center the conversation around this season at Mavericks.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a bunch of clips, but the clip from January 8th just kind of trumped all those others. But any of those others would have been highlight clips in any other season.
This
So
is true.
tell me about the season. How did it start for you? And
Well, wow, it's been a long year. I guess we could start with that. I mean, considering all the changes that had to go through, I mean, for me personally, this year has been pretty different, but also very cool. A lot of connection with family being a big part of it. I think that's kind of happened across the globe. You start getting centered around your home. You start adventuring within a little closer proximity. So, I've been doing a bit of that, really, to be honest, just exploring different stuff here in town, because usually I'm traveling, right? I'm on the road either to, part of the tour, or I'm chasing waves somewhere. But so this was a little bit of a different year. You always anticipate, you go through summer and you anticipate, by the way, our store had a really busy summer. I mean, the COVID summer was a huge business boost, I think, definitely for the hard goods in the surf world. So I kind of worked through a lot of that summer. It was pretty action packed. It wasn't a lot of great surf. So it was a lot of focusing on the store. But then once the season got started, I mean, you have this kind of, it was interesting where you think of La Nina and El Nino and those weather patterns. You think, okay, this season, how's it going to be? But I kind of like the La Nina seasons here in Santa Cruz, just because not always going to be the biggest swells, but always going to be really good conditions. I mean, you push all that storm north of us, we usually get pretty good surf still. And so I was anticipating a good season, especially since I wasn't going to be going anywhere. There was a blessing in a bit of not a curse, but a bit of bad news, is that my mom's been struggling with a little bit of illness. So I was scheduled to go to Maui at the beginning of the season, which was early December. And that's when our first string of swells started. And I literally had pulled the plug on going to Maui because of my mom. I just wanted to be there for her. She wasn't doing real red hot. So I was like, I wanted to hang out and, spend that time with my family. And so they're only going to have me come over for one event over there, go to Maui. And so I kind of just said, hey, WSL okay with me? I want to stay with my mom. And they were like, no problem. And then all of a sudden, the surf started right there in the beginning of the season. That first week and a half of December, very similar to the very first week of January. It was pumping, and there was, we surfed Mavericks probably, half dozen times in the very beginning of the year. There was that December 8th day, which kind of really kicked off the season for the big stuff, because it was, we were riding kind of the outer reef, which doesn't happen every season. We get to do that occasionally when, there's massive swells, but not clean, consistent 25 foot, which is what we got on that day. So the start of the season was awesome, because there was a bunch of days around that, not just one big day. It was kind of warm up days and getting tuned up, getting lineups and getting boards dialed in. And then all of a sudden the December 8th day happened. Everybody came to town, and it was a full shindig. And I got a couple great waves. John got a couple great waves, and that kind of really set the tone for the season. Really, I mean, before all that, there was some fun surf, but that was the first kind of Mavericks hit, and that kind of got everybody kind of pumped up, because there was enough days in a row that you start to get a little bit of a rhythm, and that just kind of rolled into, because it didn't really ever get small in December. It just was kind of up and down, but it kind of slowed down the back half of it around Christmas, and then right back into it again in that beginning of January. And again, that beginning of January, from the very end of December through January, we were surfing it every day. Like literally, I was looking at my launch fees that I've been paying every day. I was like, man, I mean, we had like 25 launch fees already this year, like $15 a pop, But yeah, it literally was so consistent, and it was consistently big. You know, it was consistently enough that Mavericks was breaking, and the conditions were just unbelievable. I mean, we had glassy all day long. You know, if it did come up, it was light winds. So it was one of those kind of seasons that, and I remember having a La Nina season. I want to say it was, gosh, I can't, so bad for years, but there was a season that we did get a lot of days that were 15 foot and 20 foot kind of thing, which with great conditions, and that was a La Nina season. So I almost, in a weird way, I kind of anticipated it, just because I love being able to surf in good surf with good conditions, which you don't get it every year.
What do you do in terms of preparation, in terms of expecting
Training?
it? Yeah, I mean, so you're 51 now, is it?
51, yeah.
Okay, so were you gearing up for, a La Nina where you're going to be surfing Mavericks 20 times in a month?
No, I mean, you don't anticipate that really, but I mean, I did anticipate having a good surf season, and I think that was the big part of it, was that I had already been surfing a ton, and if you're surfing a lot, you're pretty fit, right? Gotcha. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always kind of valued, is if you're surfing once a day, and if you're getting a couple sessions in a day, which is something that kind of our season has been able to do, because a lot of times I'm working and it's like, okay, I have a couple hour window, but if the conditions have to be good, the tide has to be right. You have to know where to go. And so I kind of, luckily, living in town, you know where to go to get good surf. And so you can go, okay, well, the tide's this way. Oh, it's like a south swell or northwest swell. I'll go here. And generally the conditions are good. So it's kind of nice having that. And I don't have to worry about crowds anymore at 51. That's good. Santa Cruz, right? It's like you kind of, luckily enough, you get your fair share of sets, and it's just because everyone in the lineup. So it makes it a little easier. It's not like the North Shore where you're just sitting there at the bottom of the bucket, right?
Totally. I heard you telling Kaipo on Any Kind Live that you actually were just kind of mapping out the season. You were planning just to introduce John. You got a new ski, but you were planning to be on the ski and introduce John to Mavericks, and probably not going to be surfing that much.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, I had an older boat, so I was, anticipating, the new boat's nice to have, just because you don't want it to, as good as my older ski was to me, I still feel like, it was an 04, so it's, 15-year-old boat. So you generally want to upgrade every once in a while. So I did that. And I mean, I had been inspired the last few seasons. I mean, it wasn't like it was a complete introduction for John, because he has been surfing it a little bit more. I mean, the last couple of years. I mean, he started probably when he was 17. So that was kind of his first session. And then he's, it wasn't a great season last year. We literally we drove up there twice the whole season, and it was cruddy. We had one other day that I was gone that happened that was pretty fun in the morning, but then it was done by the afternoon. So it's like, every season's different, but that was a horrible season. The season before that, we had a pretty good run, and there was a good couple week period, I think in January, where we got some pretty good surf 2 years ago. So I was still doing it. But I don't anticipate doing it 25 times in a season, that's for sure. So it was kind of nice to have, again, I think what it kind of came down to is like the desire, right? As if you're out there and you're looking at it and you feel like you can do it, like the desire was there. So I kind of, just follow that gut and how that feels. And I guess the season was one of those things where it just felt pretty good all year.
It stood out to me this season, I don't know, just maybe in the last month or so, that the guys who are really setting performance standards are all late 40s, early 50s, which is the first time that I ever remember this happening. Nathan Fletcher's Air, for the stab high thing, he's 48 years old. Kelly's still at 49. There was somebody else too in that. Oh, Tom Curran last week with Free Scrubber. He's 56 years old and he breaks the internet with that thing, So anyways, I think it makes a lot of sense for big wave surfing, in that your knowledge out there, you have decades of experience over some of the younger guys who flew in just for that swell. And so positioning matters, and I mean, everything matters. And so I don't know where, like the fast twitch muscle fiber that you might need to do air reverses in 1 foot waves, you know, you don't need that for that style of wave. It seems like experience would matter more than
Hmm.
maybe what would matter in small surf. But tell me
I would agree with
about,
that.
so tell me about that day specifically, and how I know that you were saying that a wave that you got on December 8th kind of informed your positioning for that wave that you ended up getting on January 8th, one month later.
Yeah. Um, I would say that there was, I mean, there was a lot of footage I was able to kind of look through now that everything's documented. You know, it's pretty crazy. I mean, you get iPhone clips sent to you literally
Mm-hmm.
from in the water, right? People are sending them to you, so you can review them if you wanted to
It's
right after
amazing.
the surf. It is pretty cool. You know, and that's what's Mavericks is so nice. It's got this big channel and it's pretty easy to film. I mean, anybody can do it. So yeah, you see a lot of footage, and being able to have access to it and dissect it and get closer looks at it. I mean, you know, literally a computer now, you can kind of scrub frame by frame. And so it's one of those things where it's available. I would say that the December 8th day, I was sitting there and there was a couple waves I got early that session. You know, Twiggy got that one, big one too. Kai Lenny got some big ones on that December 8th day. And just watching those waves as well and just dissecting where we were taking off, there was still another basically, you know, 20 yards or so you could probably grab a bit deeper and get behind it. And that's one of the things I've always kind of, you know, had visualized, but just never had the time to execute it or even got the opportunity. So again, when you start to get a little more comfortable, you have the confidence in your equipment, you know, you're getting a lot of reps. That kind of helps. And so I kind of just pushed myself to go a little bit deeper. This day specifically, it was kind of a unique day. In the morning, it hadn't really picked up. It was forecast to get pretty solid. The buoys were showcasing there was about a 3-hour period where I was going to get above 20 feet that day. And literally, I mean, the buoy systems are so good now. I mean, being able to dissect, you know, the pulse of the buoy and when the peaks of the swells are going to be, and knowing all that information, which is experience too of just watching it and seeing it all the time. That day, I saw that there was going to be a bit of peak, and John was kind of amping to go in the morning. He surfed all morning, and I kind of watched and did water safety for a few of the crew there because there wasn't a lot of the safety crew out that day in the morning, just because it hadn't come up quite enough yet. It was still kind of slow. But then, you know, about 11, I'd say 11:30 or 12 o'clock was when that pulse was starting to hit, and it was supposed to be for a couple hours between 12 and 3. I got the opportunity to go on my turn, and there was a couple bigger sets that were starting to show. So I kind of just was like, I'm just going to go grab, you know, one off that spot and go sit on it. And it literally, probably 10 minutes in the session, I had positioned for that spot and just pushed myself that much deeper, and a set came and turned around, and I thought the wave was going to be, when I look at it and watch it again, just dissecting it, I thought it was going to let me in right away and just let me get to my feet, but it didn't. I had to work for it a little bit, which kind of can be a little bit dangerous because you can put yourself so far behind it that you're not able to get behind it. You know, it'll close out on you. But luckily, I got to my feet and I had enough time, and at that point, everything goes to a blur.
Okay.
Literally,
I was curious about that.
Yeah, it literally is. You're so hyper focused. I mean, I understood I was deep. I understood that it was the only line I could take was through it. You know,
Yeah.
if I had gone straight, I would have just, you know, it would have been the worst case scenario. So literally, the best place you can go is straight up in it, and you'll see that most generally you see even at Yahi, where at Jaws, guys, you know, they're going straight in the hook, and that's going to be the best place to be, is underneath it. And hopefully, you're not going to hit the bottom, or if you don't make it out, and it closes out on you, at least it's not going to be lip to the head, right? It's just going to be around you. So I just went up into it, and at that point, as soon as I got around that kind of chunkier stuff, the slabby kind of weirdness, you know, again, I'm reacting in those moments, so I don't even know what I was feeling or seeing at that time. But as soon as I got up into the hook, everything smoothed out, the board smoothed out, and it was just like, at that point I was enjoying it, and I was just like, look, this thing's going to stay open. And it was pretty obvious just because it had this really nice kind of cup to it, and it wasn't going to do the, you can see it kind of start to run away from you if it's going to go up and barrel up, which usually Mavs does. It kind of barrels to the corner. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
stay open and turn and open up, which this one had that look. And sure enough, I just was, wow, this is actually going to work out. Pretty awesome.
I almost feel like the wave wouldn't have been makeable from the main peak. Like you needed to be that 20 yards deep or chipping into it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, at a certain size, the bowl does get unapproachable. It's just too vertical. It's too, and in a real 20-foot wave, which translates probably 40 foot on the face, it just becomes too much of a tight transition. There's not enough ability to get in it, and you got to take off. And that's always what we had been doing when we were trying to catch those 20-foot waves, was you just sit and you try to get as deep as you can without being too deep, which, and then you're right into the shallowest part of the wave. So we always anticipated and thought that you could get behind it, but how? And there's only a certain size and a certain direction that it kind of starts to make sense, because it'll lift outside and get you that kind of chip in behind it. It's just really scary to kind of backdoor a section like that.
Absolutely. Or to even sit in that spot, because it's probably a perilous spot if there's,
if you make a mistake, it's not, that's the thing. You're sitting outside too. It's not just deeper, right? It's outside and deeper too, right? So the kind of the way the reef kind of shapes, it's so unique too, because after that day, the 8th, then the 10th came, right? Which was the much bigger day. And the same thing, I was just thinking to myself, hey, I want to go sit, and today could be the day. If you lined one up, it would be the biggest paddle wave you could ever get in your life, right? And it was doable the way we were seeing it, just because the conditions were there. It's just a matter of being in the spot. And all of a sudden, this lineup that usually is only 50 square yard bowl, right? All of a sudden now it became a 350 square yard bowl, right? So you're trying to figure out where you wanted to be for certain set waves. I was sitting 100 yards away from Kai Lenny and Nathan Florence. They were sitting kind of off in this, sitting directly outside of the bowl, but like 250 yards outside of it. And then I was sitting like 100 yards deeper and a little bit inside, trying to get these chip shots that were over there that I thought I saw. And so we're all kind of trying to analyze it, because we don't know. We're just trying to figure it out. But one thing I could sense was that the water it was really unique. The water was super glassy, kind of over the shape of the reef, and almost had like a little bit of height to it. So you could kind of almost see the reef, or maybe I was just tripping and I was so hyper focused that I was thinking I was seeing the reef, but I was literally trying to visualize where these reefs are, where the shallow spots were, and just reading the water as best you could to kind of see it. And you can kind of see like where it falls off into deep water. There's a subtle little change in texture of the water, but just analyzing all of that. That's the funnest part of all of it, right? And you're triangulating the whole time. The current's moving you. Set waves would come and it would pull you off the reef. So you always are like calculating and readjusting to try and find your spot and sit on that spot. And that's why I love it so much, I think, is because you're so hyper focused on all of that you're just so in the moment, right? Because you have to be. And it's heightened, right? Because of fear and adrenaline and whatever else it is. It's like you literally turn into a superhero, and
the consequences.
That's true.
How hard is it to triangulate and to maintain position out there? Do you have markers on land that you can use?
Yeah, I do. I've got a bunch of them. It's pretty nice because there's several things you can look at as long as it's clear. That's one of the things we get fog and we get haze, but I've always found that when you're triangulating, if you can look to the furthest point you can see away, right, and then bring the next point you're trying to triangulate behind it, if you're able to line up something that's kind of closer and farther away, it's almost a more precise of a triangulation. At least that's what I've found. So I'm always trying to find that furthest point away, and then one that's a little bit closer to the cliff. And so as soon as you get those kind of spot on, that's when you're in the spot. So it's not just triangulating in a triangle. It's actually lining two spots up on a hill, right? And then you're doing the same thing in a triangulation. So you're lining it up. So it really gives you a very precise location. And until I get my Apple Watch to tell me my spot on the my GPS spot,
I never even thought about utilizing that.
It would be rad.
Yeah. I mean, is it that accurate? Like to the foot, probably?
I would say it's pretty close enough,
Closer
right? I mean,
than
if you
our
could,
visuals would be for the
I would
triangulation.
say so. I mean, the only thing is you'd have to have an app that would say, okay, you're falling off of it or whatever, because that's the thing too. Is like certain sets move you one way,
Hmm.
certain size of wave will move you a little bit, and there's all these things that kind of happen when waves move by that pulls you off the reef, and then all of a sudden the tide changes, and all of a sudden it pulls you a different way, and so you're always, and the wind comes up and changes again. You're always. That's why it's like I said, if it's just like a computer telling you, it'd be.
Yeah.
I like the triangulation part of it. It's way better.
Is there anybody else that sits on that chip shot spot?
Yeah, no, there's guys that have.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it, we've all attempted it over the years and made moves to do it. I think that I probably um, have tried to figure it out the most. I guess. I mean, I've sat out there and gotten skunked too. There's plenty of
Hmm.
days where I've been trying to push myself to sit out there and get one. It never happens. So um, that's just part of it. And there's like, I mean, there's a few guys that are on it for
Okay.
sure.
Um, After you kicked out of that wave, you sat there on your board, what looked like just soaking it in. What was going through your mind then? And is that what you were doing?
Yeah, no, I was for sure kind of. That's a great feeling, right? Is the contemplation. It's the best part of it, to be honest, because there's all the preparation, right? So you're always kind of, and that's kind of cool too, because you're always trying to dissect and get the best stuff, best equipment. Everything's got to be right. I love that preparation part of it. The actual like act of doing it is a lot of times a blur, and that's why I think because you're so in the moment and so clear in the moment that you're not really remembering anything. At least in that, like it's hard to even recollect waves. In a session, you're like, oh, that was it that wave, or but then the reflection, the time afterwards, the drive home. I mean, I remember the drive home. That was like an instantaneous kind of kick out because I knew it was a special wave, so it was pretty clear, I guess. And so that kind of kicking out moment of sitting there, I did want to soak it in,
Yeah.
and the lineup was going bananas, right? I mean, they're my son, one of my best friends, and Jamie Mitchell, best friend in Kurt Myers. They're all in there, and they're just losing it, So it was a good rad feeling, So yeah, I was definitely soaking it in.
I was almost bummed at Jamie for interrupting it for you. But I knew like I mean, you would want to celebrate with him, and so it's all
Yeah,
fine. But because I don't know that people always have, maybe this comes with age too and experience, but I don't know that people always have the foresight to soak it in. They want to celebrate and they want to like
yeah,
go and high five, but that moment is fleeting and you never get
yeah.
another chance at it. And
Time
so
to soak it in.
you were wise to just
Yeah,
sit there and be like, oh my gosh, let this kind of wash over me for a minute.
yeah, and I think a lot of it too is surfing too is a very individualized sport in a way, so you can kind of gain that kind of. Whereas team, it's like, oh yes, and you're thinking about
Right.
a touchdown. It's a touchdown dance with the team, kind of thing, right?
True.
Whereas I think if you got a guy who, what was the guy's name that climbed, you know, free climbed
Oh yeah. Free solo,
free
Alex
solo.
Honnold.
Yeah, so I mean that guy. I mean he got to the top of that playlist, and he was by himself for probably a pretty long time, soaking it in because
Totally.
right, and that's kind of similar in a way. I think it's
For
as you're
sure.
like him climbing that mountain. He would probably have visualized every crack and cranny to get up to the top, but when it was happening, and he did it so fast that he was just in a zone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of being in the zone. You just are literally you're reacting, right? And so you don't really remember. You're just
Hmm.
doing, and I think that's part of the allure of why I like doing it. Big wave surfing.
I feel so. I guess this question is irrelevant now that you've explained that um, your brain doesn't process the wave itself. You're just kind of in automatic mode. But my original question was going to be lots of times when I review footage of something or look at photographs from a vacation, let's say, my actual memory starts to get washed away each time I view it, and it gets replaced by the viewing of the thing. you know, and so
Yeah.
I'm always apprehensive to tell a story too many times or to look at the photo or video too many times, because I want the initial experience of it to be the main experience of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how
I
can
don't
you not
know.
rewatch that wave, you know?
And I've gotten to a point where I have, as a screensaver, I have a shot here that I have, but the actual video, yeah, I don't watch it as often anymore, because now I'm starting to look at it and go, shoot, I should have been a little deeper.
No way. Crazy.
Right? You look at it, you can go, you could have been a little deeper.
Yeah, that's insane.
But that's just, that's wanting to try and get better, right? Like, it's kind of part of life.
Well, that's a perfect segue actually for the next question, which is, do you feel like the best day of surfing is behind you?
I don't think so. No, I mean, because I'm checking the surf today. It's like, I'm always looking for the next good surf. So I hope that desire never goes away. I want to be able to have that, because it's motivation. It's, it keeps me healthy. So yeah, I hope it doesn't go away. I always think the next best day is right around the corner.
I've always felt that way. And it never dawned on me that you could feel another way until I saw that wave. And I just thought, well, Pete, like,
I can hang it up.
I mean, not that you would hang it up, but you're not, I mean, when are all the elements going to align and you be in peak performance to make it happen again?
I don't know. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know.
it could have been the next week, to be honest, because
Yeah.
that
Well,
day,
the next, 2 days later, right?
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
but again, the approach was different after riding that wave a little bit too. I didn't feel the need to go and put myself in extra risk, because I'd kind of done that,
Well, that question or the comment that I made about 50-year-olds ruling it in 2021, are you concerned about any kind of athletic limitation moving forward, and can you mitigate against it?
Um, I haven't given it a ton of thought, but I mean, I definitely know that there's been ebbs and flows. An example would be like, there's times in my 40s where I didn't have that, ultimate desire to be, charging big waves, right? I was doing I taken over the commissioner role, and like had done these other things in my life that I was kind of focusing on. So it wasn't something I was kind of had the energy to put towards. Whereas I think now, like I said, with the COVID, right, it's kind of like, okay, what can I do to keep myself motivated? And surfing was one of those things, because we had a lot of great surf. I had the time. So it was, it just kind of ebbs and flows. So I feel like I may have some time later in my life where I don't have a lot of motivation to surf every single day. But right now I do. So I'm kind of just going with that.
Good.
Who knows what happens in a year's time, but I know that it feels good to be pursuing and chasing surf and focusing around family around it. Feels pretty darn good.
Speaking of family around it, how does John's mom feel about him being out there?
Well, she's sitting right next to me, so I would say that she has a little bit of fear around it. I mean, she's had to deal with me for 30 years of our life, so I think she's figured out ways to get through it. I don't know if it's something, a master plan for her to like, yeah, I want John to surf Mavericks every single time it breaks. That's something that I think she leaves up to John, and she doesn't really show her influence either way. She'll definitely, stay safe, put your sunscreen on, you got your flotation vest, kind of stuff like that for reminders. I will say that when we are surfing and we're gone for the day and it's the two of us, that things around the house and everything gets cleaned up. So I know she finds ways to focus her energy elsewhere. A lot of the stuff at the shop gets taken care of, so it's pretty cool that she has found a way to distract herself from it. And I try to do a float plan with her. It's like, hey, we're going out, and then when I'm done, I try to let her know that we're done so she can have that at ease, because I know it must be stressful. I mean, it's stressful for me, and I'm out there watching my kid, and he's sitting there trying to pack lefts, and I'm just like,
totally.
I don't, I understand the dangers of it. You know, and I think he does too, and because he does take a very good and calculated approach to it, but at the same time, mistakes happen. So you're, you know, always being aware of that. So there is I'm a little bit more scared for him than I am for myself.
I would imagine, for sure.
Actually, a lot more scared.
Yeah. Have you guys found yourselves, either of you, in any real harrowing situations?
um, yeah. We actually, I mean, he does. I mean, this is the thing is that, you know, we've been doing a little bit of tow surfing together, and unfortunately and fortunately, we don't have a lot of places to practice, right? So, I mean, it's great that we live in a marine sanctuary, and it's great that I don't have to see a bunch of yahoos running around on jet skis. But at the same time, it's how do we train to learn how to drive these boats? It's very, very crucial, and to get that experience. And where do you do that? You know, going out at Mavericks when it's 10 to 12 feet and, you know, not a lot of guys in the water, and you're trying to tow around when it's, you know, that doesn't
Yeah.
look good, right?
No.
Kind of dumb, but it's training, and it's a way to get somebody used to doing that, getting the timing down, and pickups and all of these things that are so crucial. So it's hard to get that time. And I think that's why Bragg is so important, because the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group, because they have all these great tips that you can do and learn just by talking to people and having these, you know, briefings. So those are important, but the most important is obviously getting that experience and getting into the froth and driving the boat, knowing how it's going to work. So with John, the harrowing situation is, sorry, long story, but you know, we didn't have that opportunity. So when we did get those opportunities, it was real life opportunities, you know, and I'd gotten whipped into a pretty good sized wave, and I put myself too deep because I let go early, and I was trying to, you know, thinking, oh, well, good, I'm going to skid into this one. And then I got caught behind on it, and it was, you know, solid wave that broke outside of the bowl. So it was bigger than a 20-foot wave, 25-footer or something that rolled through, and it smoked me pretty good. And I came up, and the next one was bigger, and I had to take that one on the head. And John didn't come in right away for me, which is fine, because I don't necessarily. I mean, I should be able to take a few on the head,
Yeah.
especially if it's in the main bowl. And he ended up coming after me after the next one, and it was some frothy water, and he had to like pick me up and grab, you know, and he did everything right. We talked about it, but going out doing it was so important. And that's one of those things where he picked me up. It was actually on Surfline. There was a shot of him coming in to get me and grab me, and that was after the second wave, which was perfect timing. You know, it don't necessarily need to go in there right after the next wave, because that's usually a very tough pickup. You know, take a couple on the head, slows down, grab someone, you know, and I should be able to do that. And I did. And he did a great job in that. And then there was another situation on the 10th, which is the big day, where I was paddling, and I had gotten caught inside, and I was way out the back. Twiggy had just gotten his wipeout, right, where he just aired out and wiped out. And this was kind of that was probably the peak of the swell. There's like 2 or 3 sets right in that moment. And Twiggy had that nasty wipeout, so the whole water patrol was chasing him down, and he went through the rocks. So there's like, you know, several guys kind of trying to get him, and he was the focus. There was another huge set that came that broke outside on me, and you know, Nathan and Kai were sitting far enough to the side. They got through it, but the one that came on me landed on my head, and I had to swim through it, and my cord broke. And so I was left swimming. And I remember coming up and going, wow, I'm out here. Like, I hope John's paying attention. I just raised my hand, and I waved my hand, and so I'm waving, I'm looking, and he's already coming around the corner from way inside to coming around to buzz and come and grab me. And he was there instantly. So I'm just like, wow, this kid, he sees it, you know, he pays attention, and he picked me right up. And then that's when that same set, if I hadn't gotten picked up, I was sitting in the channel, and we were sitting there, and then another set came, and that's the one that cleaned up Kai. And he talks about the one that he got pulled through the bowl, and the same thing. So that was kind of a moment where I would have been in swimming if he hadn't seen me. So again, just paying attention is something that's so key, and he was on it.
Amazing. Have you had to rescue him out of any harrowing situations?
Not yet, really.
Good, good.
Not yet. I hope I don't ever have to. But I mean, it's, you know, you surf out there enough, you're going to take some waves on the head, and it's just part of it. I mean, he was telling me the other day he's been doing a lot of Wim Hof, which is, you know, all that breathing and doing ice baths and the whole thing. So he's taking it seriously.
Good.
But he did a negative breath hold that he held his breath for 4 minutes. I'm like, a negative breath hold where you blow all your air out and hold your breath for 4 minutes. And he did a lot of breathing exercises to get to that point, to get a bunch of oxygen into his body to do that. But that's still amazing. Like if you have
So
that kind of
gnarly.
confidence, so I can go, you're going to blow all your air out and still have 4 minutes to go. I think you can handle a wave or two on the head.
What's his ambition with pro surfing? I mean, I'm assuming he's still pursuing a pro surf career.
Uh, yeah, I would say that would be great. You know, in the industry right now with no competition, and you've got to be, I mean, a pro surfer these days is basically being an entertainer, right? It's like, that's what your job is to create content and be an entertainer and get people to watch your content. That's what a pro surfer is. It's not going to be about how many heats you win, because we're not competing right now. So it's a tough time for a lot of pro surfers. You know, you have to go out there and you have to have a video guy who's going to create some good footage for you and create entertainment and get people eyes to see it, and how you can do that, and be a producer and be an actor and a director all in one. That's kind of what it is. So it's a different job now.
But does he have that ambition?
I do believe that that's his ambition. He loves competing. You know, he likes getting video work done, and he puts his edits down. I mean, I wish he was better at his social feeds, to be honest. I think
Well,
that would be key to, you know, to helping him prosper as a pro surfer.
do you want that life for him?
Good question. I want him to follow his dreams. So if that's his dream, yeah. I want to see opportunity for him elsewhere though too, not just one. You know, have a bunch of eggs in the basket, right? And our store is the family heritage. I think is important. He's been putting hours in here. You know, he's got shifts in here, so that's cool. I think he loves traveling. He loves going and exploring. So that's something I know that I enjoyed. You know, in regards to what that does ambition wise, as far as a job goes, I mean, I just want him to be, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him be a pro surfer. I'd love to see him put a bunch of hours in here too, you know, so.
Having the option would be a nice position
Yeah.
to be in. You know what I mean?
And
So if he could,
yeah.
but I've been running that same calculus about what is a pro surfer for the last year or two. And obviously it no longer equates to just being the best surfer in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's especially true in the time of COVID when there aren't contests, like you mentioned. But the level of commitment it takes for Ben Gravy and Jamie O'Brien to put out 2 edits a week
Mm-hmm.
is just beyond my comprehension. Like it is a
Yeah.
full-time thing, and not only working full-time, but being on full-time, and your full life kind of being on display. And
Mm-hmm.
that takes a really unique person, a really unique
Yeah. No, I
personality
agree.
type.
I agree. And to be honest, you know, as me personally, yeah, it's too much work.
Totally.
I don't want to document every single moment of every single
Heck no.
moment of my life, right? So it is interesting to see how pro surfing is evolved, and you know, what it takes now.
Yeah, it really is interesting. Um, let's do a quick backstory on Freeline. I know your parents opened it the same year that you were born, 1969. Was your dad already shaping prior to opening the shop?
Yes.
Okay.
So he actually started his shaping career many years. He actually worked at GNS in San Diego. So when
That's
he was
right.
living, yeah, he lived in San Diego for a period of time with my mom, and he was working down there, and he actually started a shop down there too, in Ocean Beach. So he had like a little shack down there at one point, and then they kind of picked up, and that was in '68. They picked up and moved to the North Shore. So then he was living in Mokulea, and he was shaping boards out of his out of a shop in the house.
Wow.
So trying to just make it on the North Shore there for a little while. It didn't didn't have a whole lot of prosperity there, and then had driven through Santa Cruz at one point, you know, in their little drive up the coast, and they kind of loved it and said, let's move to Santa Cruz. So that happened kind of, you know, and when they got pregnant. So it would have been like February, March, they decided to move to Santa Cruz and then just open up the first store then that summer. And have been planted ever since. So it's been pretty cool that it's right here on the east side of Santa Cruz, right at Pleasure Point. And it really has been one door for 50 years, which is pretty neat because provided for our family for years.
I can't imagine what Santa Cruz would have been like back in the late 60s,
awesome.
Early 70s. Was it the only surf shop?
No, actually O'Neill had their corporate headquarters on 41st at that time. The same year Santa Cruz Surf Shop opened up. So it was like kind of us three on 41st. Pearson Arrow, I think, had started in that same era. So it was kind of an interesting, because it was right when like commercial, you know, business, you know, kind of started. There was O'Neill Wetsuits was kind of 52 is when they, you know, started. That's when they kind of coined the surf shop when they opened up a store at Cowell's. And I want to say it was probably later than that they actually had the first surf shop. But that's what they, you know, 1952 was their kind of origin of date of, you know, the wetsuit. Same with Body Glove too. I think they kind of started in that same time frame. You know, and surfboards, you know, the whole thing about surfboards is that, you know, you think about all the pro surfers, they all were shapers in their own right at that time, right? They made their own equipment. So it was kind of what you did. And, you know, as surfing grew, not everyone wants to build their surfboards. So there was this market that kind of started then. And, you know, custom surfboards was it. My dad was really big in kneeboards, and that was something that was kind of huge here in Santa Cruz at the time. There was a pretty good kneeboard industry, I guess you could say, and he was a big part of that.
When you were coming up or growing up as a kid, did you have any ambition to take over the business, and did your dad expect that of you?
It's a funny one, because I would think that there was a little bit of an expectation from him that I would at some point, and I always kind of alluded that I would, but I also didn't put a lot of time in, right? It wasn't like I was at 20 years old going, hey, I'm gonna, you know, start managing the shop. You know,
Right.
I took an interest in shaping boards. I did that a bit. You know, I shaped probably 500 boards or so in my life. So I did that for a little while, and you know, I always had worked retail. I worked in the factory and did ding repair, and so I always kind of dabbled in all these different things that was part of the store, but I never just said take it over. That took you know, that didn't really actually happen until 2017, which is, you know, where I actually literally said, hey, my wife and I are going to take over the store, and you're going to retire. Because he's always kind of used it was his shop. I mean, he wanted to run the business. And I think it was just good timing at that point. It was like, okay, he wanted to, you know, take a lot more time in Hawaii and not have to run the business. And we were ready to do that. So it was kind of cool that, you know, my wife has been part of the business for, you know, our whole lives really together. So, you know, 25 years of marriage, and she's been at the shops that whole time too. So she's a big part of helping my dad run the shops. And so she kind of was basically my other half. So I kind of did the marketing. I was a pro surfer doing that and talking about stuff, but she was really good at being behind the scenes and helping my dad to run the business and giving my influence in the store. So I was always a part of it, but I never really took ownership until 2017, where I started having to write the checks and make sure that the checkbook balanced and that we were paying our bills. So, yeah, I think it's just a good time that it happened. And, you know, we did, you know, a remodel here at the store. So that was helpful for my wife to be more involved too, because my dad had his rustic way of running a surf shop, which, you know, we kind of wanted to clean things up a little bit more and modernize it. And Tara was a big part of that.
Does your dad still shape?
He does. He does still shape. He's been saying, though, that he wants to do less.
Okay.
Recently, he's been mentioning, it's kind of been a thing where, you know, but he's like, okay, so who's going to be the next, you know, shaper for Freeline? You know, because I've got my stepson too, who's Anthony. He's a big part of, you know, he's in here 5 days a week. He's really good at using the machines and doing ding repairs. My dad's like, oh, does he want to shape? You know, does he want to come in and start using the shaping room? And kind of pitched that out there to Anthony. I don't know. I mean, I could maybe take up the planer here and there. It's fun. It's fun shaping it, but when you start doing it for work, it's hard work.
I had no idea that you actually shaped that many boards.
Yeah.
That's
No,
pretty
there's a
awesome.
period of, yeah, it was a period of time where I was doing it as part of a living, you know, and pro surfing. I was shaping boards for a bunch of folks. So it's kind of cool.
I didn't
Got to
realize
learn a
that.
lot.
What label were they under?
They're under Freeline.
Oh,
You
they
know, I
were.
had
Okay.
yeah, they're under Freeline, and I had Peter Mel shapes under Freeline. So, I mean,
Gotcha.
that's the thing. Like, I never ever wanted to branch out and do my own brand. I almost feel like that there's so much legacy in Freeline that's why I just wanted to take the store over and the brand over and
Yeah.
keep it kind of family. And usually, you know, it kind of comes full circle. I mean, we're kind of in that boat right now where people want to support us, you
So
know, as a
that,
mom and pop business.
I wanted to ask you that actually. Retail has changed so much, even pre-COVID, like the last decade, retail has changed drastically. What is the value of retail?
Well, I think there's a, great
Considering, and
question.
I'll pose it to you this way. I'm a surfer. I can get my boards direct from my local shapers. I can order wetsuits online. I can order clothing online. So what is the value of retail with all those things in mind?
Well, I mean, let's take you as a customer, for example, right? You're a customer that is been in surfing your whole life, right? Or been a part of surfing for a very long time. So you're going to have all these connections, right? And you're not necessarily the customer I want to have. Although I know that there's a time when you're going to have to get some resin and you're going to have to get some cloth and you to do a ding repair for a friend or whatever. You're going to come to our store because we're going to have those materials for you. I'm going to have a box. I'm going to have an FCS box or a futures box, a leash cup that you're going to have to fix. And so I have all that stuff in there. So I want to have that community-based availability to people, bars of wax, leashes, pads. Occasionally you're going to need that kind of stuff. But I also feel like there's a service part of retail that there's that customer who happened to go to Costco and buy himself a wave storm and then all of a sudden realize that riding a wave was the sickest thing ever, yet they don't have anybody to go to. They come to a surf shop and they walk into a shop, they want somebody that's going to give them an understanding of what they want to do. I mean, there's a bunch of different types of surfers out there, and some people don't even know what they want to be. And I pose these questions, and people come in and are like, "Yeah, I want to get a better board. I have Wave Storm, and I want to get a surfboard." I'm like, okay, well, you know, what appeals to you? Do you like longboards? Do you like shortboards? Where's your goals or aspirations to do it? And you ask these people all these questions, and they're like kind of baffled. They're like, "Well, wait, I don't really know."
Yeah.
I guess I want to ride a shortboard. Okay, well, if you want to ride a shortboard, maybe you want to go to a hybrid first and progress down. And so you give all these people information. And so the value of a surf shop, and especially a surf shop that has clued in employees, is you're going to get service and you're going to get the right stuff. You're not just going to be ordering something because it looks cool and it's be the wrong board, and then all of a sudden you hate surfing. Whereas if you came into a shop like ours and you get to answer these questions about what kind of a surfer and what you need as a surf shop, we're going to give you those things. We're going to give you, you know, real-time information on what the best wetsuits are for the conditions you're surfing in, or what you want to spend your price point. Why am I paying $500 or $150? You know, and people just don't know that information until they get told from a surf shop.
Yeah. It's the role of the surf shop has changed because when I was a kid, it was a gateway into the culture. Like you had to go into a surf shop to get the bare essentials just to surf with. But once you're there, there's guys that are like way too cool that, you know, I want to fit in with, but I don't quite fit in with. And they're talking about where they surf this morning and what the tide does at different spots on different days. And so it was like this portal into the culture. And it's where I got all of my intel, you know, and then I'd come back to school and share that information with friends.
Yeah.
And I think that still exists.
I still think it does. I mean, but I think it's, it's changed.
It's more friendly now. Like there isn't the, I don't know, the not fitting in aspect. Now it's much more friendly because people they want the customers.
Yeah.
But I feel like it also exists a lot more prevalently on the East Coast and probably up in Santa Cruz as well. I'm in Southern California, and there's only a few that remain like that,
Yeah.
the Frog
Yeah.
House and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
And you find your niche, and I think you find what you're good at. Like for example, I mean, this season was kind of, a lot of things are variables too, right? Like where the waves are going to be fun and how big they are and this, that, and the other. Like, um, when the waves are small and there's been no sand over at Cowles too, right? Which is one of the great learning spots over on the west side of town, whereas this season didn't have a lot of sand. So it didn't break very often. So a lot of people had to go that were trying to learn had to come to Pleasure Point. And so Pleasure Point became this kind of focus of placing to learn. And there's great ways to do that. But I think that's what brought a lot of people, plus the fact that there was no sports and,
yeah,
school was out, like, and people didn't have their jobs. They were coming to the beach, and this was the beach to be at. So, I mean, our rental surfboard business is good. And that kind of introduces people, and then we try to give them the right service too. Plus, we don't want our boards destroyed, so we kind of tell people where they need to go at high tide,
right.
and what stairways to avoid, and that's all information. I do believe that when some newbie comes in and they get this information on where they need to go and why, and they had no clue, all of a sudden they got this great information that basically saved their kid getting smashed in the rocks. Like, that's
Yeah,
stuff that's going to live, and all of a sudden they're going to be customers, and they're going to return customers, and they're going to be happy about it.
good. What imprint in the store is devoted to surfboards?
I have a pretty huge rack. I mean, I would say we've got 150 boards.
Awesome.
That can, I mean, the back has a bunch of, rental stuff that we do, and we do a bunch of repair work. So we have a bunch of that board room. And then the front has, like I said, there's a lot of space in there for surfboards. And so that's at least half the store is filled with wetsuits and surfboards. The back 25% is going to have fins and repair and all that stuff. I do have a full kind of soft goods stuff, which is a lot of our brand, which is, our sweatshirts and sweatpants and t-shirts. And then we carry, Volcom, we carry Outer Known, we carry Quicksilver, Dakine, we carry all the major surf brands, and try to, Reef and Sanook, all these surf brands, and try to give everybody a little piece of it. So
Good.
it's supporting of the industry as a whole.
Whose boards do you carry? Do you carry local shapers or?
I do. We carry Kalu Coletta, which is a second generation shaper. Steve Coletta has retired and moved to the points of Mexico. So Kalu, he used to work in here a bunch, but now he's so busy that he's kind of stepped away from the retail part of it and just doing all the surfboards. So we carry his boards. We also have Pat Taylor, who has been shaping boards in town for as long as I can remember. Matter of fact, Santa Cruz Surf Shop he was a competitor at one point, but now he's shaping boards for us. We have Channel Islands. We just got some Sharp Eyes. So we kind of have pretty much a gamut of everything. I do overseas stuff. I do stuff from Global Surf, which is a great introductory board. It's kind of an easy sell, because you can go, okay, these boards are from overseas. They're made in Taiwan. They don't have surfers that are touching them. Yeah, they're $750 for a longboard. Whereas, you want to pay $1,000, you're going to get something that's made in America, made by a surfer. Surfers are touching it, and that's why you're paying that extra. It's an extra easy kind of step up to sell
Yeah.
somebody and have them go to a local shaper's board. And then
Speaking
I've got
of,
the Ferraris, which are all the Channel Islands and Sharp Eyes. All these best shapers and our best surfers in the world are riding their boards, so that's why they're the same price.
speaking of the best surfers in the world riding their boards, what were you riding on that fateful day at Mavericks?
I had just gotten, that was a 910. I actually got a pair of them this year from Britt. Britt had, I kind of wanted to have a little smaller boards. I have this really amazing Magic 10.0 that was made by them about 4 years ago.
Britt Merrick.
And Britt Merrick, yeah, from Channel Islands. So Britt did the newer ones that I have now. And they're a little bit more refined. So that board specifically was a 910. John kind of taxed the 9.6. He was like, he did. It was like, I was riding it, but ever since he wrote it, and then all of a sudden he got all these great waves on it, and all of a sudden it kind of became his board, and so I just kind of don't want to break it. I just kind of let him use it. But
I
even
don't,
when you have a good board, it's hard to give it up.
I mean, I should have asked you this earlier because you referenced how important equipment is in preparation for big days like that. I actually don't think of Britt as a gun shaper. I didn't know that he even made guns. Why did you
Yeah.
rely on him for the season?
Well, I've been relying on his. I mean, and this is realized that Britt is second generation from Al, right? So the reality is I'm taking one of the files that Al has been working on, right? And then this is something that came across the back, and then we're refining it further, right? So it's not something that's been just blindly made by Britt Merrick. This is something that's got lineage behind it, right? So nowadays with the computers and being able to kind of replicate boards, you can make these real subtle changes. And one of the things I found with Britt when I started, because I've used a few shapers in the stable there at Channel Islands, but Britt, when I got his boards, for some reason, they had this really almost like velvet. It was really unique that I could sit there and see his boards and the way that they were foiled and everything. They felt like velvet, right? It was the weirdest thing. And I told him that too. I'm like, dude, I see your boards are like so refined, and they look like velvet. So I kind of associated that with him, and I've asked him to be able to shape my boards, and he said no problem, man. He's shaping for all the top guys. It's kind of nice that he's able to kind of fit me in and get me a few boards. And again, I just have the confidence and we've known each other for a very long time. So I mean, I used to compete we're about the same age, so he was a little younger than me, but we used to compete and hang out the WSA, and I'd go to Santa Barbara for the invitationals, and he would be down there. We've always had kind of a pretty good rapport. We were always cordial to each other. I liked him, he liked me, and so we've had a relationship for a very long time. And then just to be able to kind of hit him up and tell him about the equipment and how it works, and that the charisma between us two has worked. So it's easy to talk to him. He asks the right questions, kind of thing. It's just, it's a great rapport.
Can you tell me anything about that board specifically and what allowed it to put you in that situation and perform?
Well, I think a lot of the initial equipment that I got from Channel Islands in the beginning. So Scotty Martinson, do you know who Scotty Martinson is?
No.
So he worked at CI. He's been there forever. He used to be at the surf shop, actually, the Channel Islands surf shop in Santa Barbara, and he managed that, and that's where I met him. But then he's kind of transitioned to running the accessories. But he's also a great surfer, and he's a bigger guy. So I actually ended up getting my first gun was Scotty Martinson's board. It was Travis Lee was working at CI at the time, and he said, "Oh, I got this board I can give you. Scotty broke his leg. He's not gonna be able to surf this season. So this board's, it's new. It's perfect for you." I'm like, okay. And so he brought it up to me, and it was right before we were going to serve a Mavericks event. And like I said, it was, this was probably almost 10 years ago. And he brought the board, and the thing was so big. It looked huge for me, way bigger than anything I'd ever ridden. And so it kind of sat on ice, and I never really used it. And then I finally got an opportunity to use it. It was a crowded day, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to try it. The thing's massive. I can paddle it really good. I can out paddle everybody. I'm a little bit bigger than I usually am because I picked up some weight. I'm like, okay, this is the big board. I'm going to ride the big board. And I ended up getting a couple waves on the board, and it felt unreal. And you couldn't feel the size. So it was like one of those things where I kind of fell in love with it, and the fact that you could have such a big board and have it work. So I kind of just said, hey, make me another one of these and we'll refine it slightly. So the next batch of boards I got from them were duplicates of that board, but just done way more refined, still big. And this was just another step again of kind of refining them and getting a little bit smaller, but still keeping all the characteristics I loved in that bigger board.
What's the refinement? What details are refined?
Just less volume, but still keeping the characteristics of a rail. I mean, I guess on big boards, I kind of liked it to you hide the volume in it, so you kind of take it out of the shoulders and the top of the rails, so you kind of just refine it slightly, so you're still getting, the thickness is still there, but then the rails are a little more sensitive, so you can kind of knife it a little bit more. They're a little faster on turning onto rail. Those little subtle things.
What was the fin setup on the board?
It's set up as a 5 fin box, so you can ride it as a thruster or a quad. One of the things that's kind of unique to Channel Islands boards that I found on the boards that I've been getting is that they move their fins up and they spread them out. So you have a wider spread on the fin system itself. So it almost is more proportional to such a big board, a 10-foot board. That was something that was kind of unique. And I remember, I really feel like this board was, the original board of those that was made was a Kelly Slater board that he did, Big Mama, that he called.
Oh yeah, I remember
boards,
that.
right? So he had the picture of the Big Mama, right? That was one
hilarious.
Of his. So that was that. I think this board was from that, right?
Okay.
That was the original kind of hand shape that was made, and so it's been refined since then, really.
Yeah, of course.
And the thing, he had the big spread and his fins there on that board too.
Okay,
and
that's
he loved
really
that board for Waimea. Yeah, so this is kind of the fin measurements have stayed pretty similar all the way from that board that was 35 years old, probably, or 30 years old, and we've kept that going through. So this one, when I rode that day specifically, was a quad, but it had a very large spread, much more bigger spread than anyone else. And I also ride very small fins. I rode 3.5 inch toe fins that were Jerry Lopez Futures on my board. So it was, tiny little fins for a board that's 10 foot. All four, same size.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's, and again, I've found over experience from toe surfing and from trial and error that, when you're going fast, you don't need as much fin. It actually kind of hinders you, because you get to a point where it becomes too much area and it starts to create lift. And you don't want that when you're going fast. I like to be able to have boards sit in the water. And so that's why I like the small fins, because the faster you go, you don't have the top end. You'll still keep going faster, and it won't create the lift or get weird. So it's something that I learned from going fast on the tow board.
The angle you took into that wave, I mean, there was a knifing in element, and also the bumps that you encountered is like an opposing kind of factor to knifing in. You could easily have gone sideways on that. Like the board did its job, like in a really, really remarkable way. Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, and another thing about those boards is they do have a bit of roll and V in them, almost an old school bottom to them. It kind of has and so that allows it to kind of cut through and have its own set of, angling. It's interesting because when you ride a 4-fin, you could easily have it bounce and actually shift to a left or to the right. Whereas if you ride a 3-fin and it has it bounces, it kind of wants to center itself, because that middle fin brings it down and keeps you centering to the center point. Whereas a 4-fin will be a little bit weird. But once you get to speed, the 4-fins are so much faster because you don't have that middle fin. So I've just kind of found that that's where I've been able to have the I like to have the speed, especially when it's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
When it starts to get bouncy, I may switch to a normal 3-fin.
Gotcha. Do you have any interest in chasing swells at Waimea or Piahi or anywhere other than Mavericks?
Well, I had the chance, and I didn't necessarily pull the trigger. I do have a desire to surf Jaws. It's just a very intense lineup, I think. And so it's, I mean, I do, but I didn't feel any FOMO missing out on the next day that I didn't show up. So no, it wasn't like I was going, oh, dang it. If it fell on my lap and I was able to be out there on a good day, or maybe if John even was like, hey, I need support to go there, like that might be something. Personally, no, I don't have a super desire to be there and doing it.
You competed in the Eddy, and there's a chance that we may never see another Eddy run again. And same might be said for Mavericks event. How do you feel about that contest not running?
Um, I mean, the whole reason why I think I really enjoyed the Eddie is what it stood for, as a celebration of big wave surfing. So I miss that element of it. The competition part of it's kind of cool to be able to kind of have that day of, but really what I miss about that is the camaraderie and the sharing of the history of what it is, what Waimea is, and um, what Eddie means to the legacy of Hawaii and to big waves. So that part I miss. I mean, an example being is we've got Mavericks events, that have come and gone for many years, and do I miss them? Not really. So, I mean, I like competition. I think it's kind of cool because it brings, on that day, it'll bring an element of everyone rising to the occasion. And I think that's cool and it's fun to watch. But I don't think it's necessary for the thriving of big wave surfing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I love when there are events, I soak them up, but this season, they haven't run, and I'm still loving it. Like I don't
Yeah,
I don't realize the void.
yeah. Um, I would agree. I think that there's enough to look at, I guess, right? There's enough out
That's
there to see.
I think that's the thing too, is all of it is available in our stream the day of. And in the
Mm-hmm.
past that wasn't a possibility, and we relied on, the broadcast to bring it to us.
Yeah.
So, um, are you going to be going to Australia?
I don't know. And it's a good question. I mean, I think if I were to do my own analysis of what the WSL should do as far as trying to keep costs down and do the right thing, I think there's enough capable personnel to run an event without me as a commentator being flown over. Um, so I feel like there's enough there, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm going to be going to the event because of that. But I don't know. I haven't really chatted about it with those guys yet. So um, I would say if it was offered, it's a pretty long stint to do, 3 events at least, but rumors of a 4th. So that's, right there, that's 40 days plus travel. That's gone for 2 months, right? Which I don't know if I'm really ready to do again.
And
The long haul,
that's if everything goes well and correctly,
right?
because if something gets locked down in the interim, you could be stuck there for even longer.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason why the decision being made to not go to Maui, because of that same thing. It's like all of a sudden you get quarantined, or who knows what could happen. You get stuck somewhere, especially if you're overseas. You could get stuck, which again, I've been enjoying home enough that I
Good.
don't necessarily have to run over there.
And Oz could close borders between states too,
I
between
know.
events even. So there's
Yeah.
just so much that can go wrong. I don't envy the decision makers at the WSL for trying to jump through all the hoops and sort it all out.
No, but I value that they're trying. I think that I really
Totally.
love watching competition, and I watch the best surfers in the world at the best waves, and I think that that's enjoyable. So I'm definitely going to miss it if it doesn't, at some point go again, because I feel like it's important that we get some events and we get a world champion again.
I'd say right off the world champ for 2021. Maybe like they can run events, but it's going to be an abbreviated year no matter what. It already
Mm-hmm.
is. And so it'll be, an asterisk next to the world title if somebody did earn one. But what's your real quickly, in terms of like fitness and preparation and all that, do you do any kind of cross training, and what's your diet like?
No, I
Okay.
don't do a ton of cross training. To be honest, I don't. I mean, I think that I try to do the best to take care of myself now, and I've been able to do that for the 40 years of my life that I've been surfing and taking care of myself and riding big waves. I think that um, there's a lot of elements that go into riding big waves that are just as important as fitness, which I don't get me wrong, I do take care of myself. I try to eat well, and I take care of my body, and I stretch. I surf a lot, but in regards to like extra training, no. And if I have a free time, I'm going to the water and going surfing. I'm not going to be jumping, going bike riding or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I'm not a fan of the gym, never have been.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like picking up iron. I don't like doing CrossFit. I watch what those guys doing. I mean, shit, it's really good for you, but it's a lot of extra time and a lot of extra sweat, which I think I'm mentally prepared to deal with a lot of the stuff I have to deal with, and that's what I feel like is important.
What about diet? Is there anything you avoid?
Gluttony, yeah. I try not to overdo anything.
That's key.
If I'm going to do anything, it's a bit of moderation.
Okay. Any Kind Live with Kaipo. Do you want to hype that?
Of course.
You guys are doing a podcast, right?
Yeah, it's Any Kind Live is Any Kind, right? I mean, he's doing it as a podcast /
vlog,
YouTube channel, right? Yeah, that's what it is. It's just to be able to do whatever we want, right? And Kaipo was the brainchild behind it. He brought me in to kind of help him during the time to do it. And we've been playing around with it. I think trying to get traction's hard. Then these podcasts and blogs are a challenge, man. You got to be on it, and you got to be doing it every week and just persistent. Which is something I value you guys doing, because it's not easy.
Consistency is definitely key for the audience, anyways.
Yeah.
If you don't post, they start complaining real quick. But it's good for you and Kipes to stay on the mics when they're, when the contests aren't running.
And it's fun. That's the whole idea behind it, is just to keep it fun. And Any Kind is exactly that. It's any kind. So we'll talk about just about anything.
Good. Final question for everybody is, what was the last surfboard that you rode? What are you riding right now?
The last surfboard I rode is a Happy 2. I rode it yesterday. Britt Maverick had shaped it. It's a little bit different refinement of the Happy, right? But a little wider in the tail and a little thinner through the rails. Always trying to tweak equipment, but that's what I was riding. It was a 2 Happy Channel Islands by Britt Maverick.
What size?
It is a 6'3" by 20 1/4 by 2 5/8.
It's like a proper shortboard.
It is normal shortboard. I mean, with the beach breaks, like where I grew up in La Selva, which is just south of town here, we got that rain going. All of a sudden, a little bit of swell, bunch of rips pulled out, so we've got sandbars everywhere. So it's awesome. Big
so
going left.
Fun. Good.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Are you providing Britt feedback on that board before they release it to the public?
I am.
Nice.
I try to. I put in as much information I can. I mean, I had one previous to this one that wasn't as good. It was a round tail. It was a little bit more of a ball bearing. So they're testing and doing things with me to push me too, just to kind of understand what they're doing with these different boards, and then gives me an understanding, because I really value that, is understanding how equipment, just these subtle changes and what it does to boards. And the one previous I had was really loose and nice, but it felt like I was kind of on a ball bearing. And this one a little more refined, a little more tail area. It worked a little better.
I would imagine you could probably communicate a lot of that even more effectively than like elite level world tour surfers, just because you have so much experience with shaping boards. And
I think it helps for sure.
Yeah,
it definitely helps.
It's invaluable.
Just understanding the material. Yeah.
Hey, I've got one of those coming too.
Good.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoy it.
I'm psyched. Right on, Pete. Well, hey, thank you for taking so much time. I know you got a lot of obligations and you're busy, so I appreciate it.
No worries, Dave.
All right.
Thanks for having me, man.
Gladly. All right. See ya.